Happy Monday, and welcome here to another edition of Husker Online Headlines. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple. What a weekend.
Busy weekend.
Oh, my God.
God, I can't believe you're
I don't even know how I made it through the weekend, but I did.
And you look fine.
No, I tried to sleep, but yeah, we had late nights, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, state swim. I was at a wedding in Palmyra.
State swim for a kid who's 11?
11, yep. 12 and under state.
Wow.
And that's a production, let me tell you. So, and then we had a wedding and Husker night and our school fundraiser, and Carly had her first confession. So I made it to Monday. And
slow down this week a little for you.
Well, we got in-state tour on Sunday.
Whew, good.
So we got that
stuff to write about
coming up. But what kept us busy over the weekend was the news with Nebraska and Tennessee. And who know better to fill us in on the Tennessee side of things than the authority of Tennessee Volunteer Football, our good friend and colleague, Brent Hubbs.
Awesome.
The publisher, owner of VolQuest.com, also a part of the Tennessee football broadcast. Brent, we had a little fun on Friday between the Tennessee and Nebraska market. It's great to have you on here.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and God bless you for surviving a swim meet, an all-day affair on
3 sessions.
I mean, and listen, congratulations to your 11-year-old, but my son wrestled for 4 years, and there's nothing like a 6 a.m. weigh-in or 7 a.m. weigh-in after you've driven an hour and a half to get weighed in, and you roll out of there about 10 o'clock at night. So I feel you on those things, man. They're fun as a parent, but they are an all-day affair. So congratulations on surviving that one.
For context, 14 hours on Saturday, they had no concession stands available.
Of course not.
Whoever made that call lost thousands of dollars.
Yeah, they did.
Because I was about to just call a food truck out there and say, hey, I'll split this halvesies with you and let's put it out in the parking lot and get rich.
You'd have printed money. Everybody thought you were a Chick-fil-A out there, man. You'd have just been printing money like crazy.
But anyway, let's get on point here, Brent. We both kind of got wind of this a few days before it came out. But it came to fruition Friday in the Tennessee market at 10 a.m. and the Nebraska market at 11 a.m. So that in its own sense, just the back and forth with the ADs and the news of this, it was pretty tense. And you could feel that from Danny White, obviously, with the nature of the cancellation of this series so close to 26 right now.
Yeah, just disappointing because you got to go try to find a game. And Tennessee wanted to play, and Tennessee's fans wanted to play. I mean, this is a series that I guess the original contract was signed in like 16 or 17, somewhere in that ballpark.
2006 is when it actually got signed.
6. So there you go. It's been bumped multiple times. And it's just one of those deals where, Tennessee wanted to play the game. I don't know where Nebraska. I know they've got the stadium renovation coming down on that. And I know some people have suggested maybe they're trying to do a little bit of what Indiana did and go a little softer in their non-conference. I don't know. I don't know what led to Matt Rule and the AD making that decision. I just know on our side of things, talking to the Tennessee people here in Knoxville, just a lot of disappointment. You're not getting to play what I think would be a fun home and home between two pretty passionate fan bases that have that have kind of walked through the wilderness for a while, trying to get back to where they were and where they want to be. And it just hasn't worked out. Now the scramble for Tennessee is you're trying to find games, and right now that's a real hard thing to do because you've got dates that you really just want to plug and play, but finding those are going to be really, really challenging.
Is there a level of understanding on the part of Tennessee fans for Nebraska's reasoning? I mean, or do they care? Do they even take time to look at it?
Nah, I mean, it's a fan base, right? I mean, you got into the message board post, they're afraid to play, and all this other stuff. And then you saw the comments from Nebraska about, the stadium renovations and everything that's going on there that made some sense. And again, a lot of people trying to imply that it's kind of an Indiana path, if you will, depending on what your Big Ten schedule is going to look like. Mm-hmm. I think what's going to be really fascinating, Steve, is just what does scheduling look like in general in the Big Ten and in the ACC as we move into 26 and 27 with the expanded playoffs. There's this talk about playing maybe a Big Ten SEC challenge. It looks like a lot of money on the surface, but are you really going to, are all the football coaches going to go to their AD and go, yeah, that's great, let's go do that? Or are they going to go, you know what, let's try to avoid that if we can avoid that thing?
Right.
The SEC's been kicking a 9-game conference schedule down the road for 3 or 4 years now. So, we'll see. But no, I mean, I don't know that there's a lot of understanding, just more disappointment, which is typical of a fan base.
Sure. Brent, we had Nebraska's AD, Troy Dannon, on with us on Friday. And one of the things he said is they offered to move this series possibly later down the road, kind of like what Nebraska had to do for Tennessee to accommodate the Bristol Motor Speedway game in 2016 and 2017. And then Nebraska got Oregon back then to replace Tennessee for those 2 years. Was it a non-starter to kick this down the road further because of the unknowns, you think, with schedules in the 2030s and beyond?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Tennessee is setting in 29 and 30 with a home and home with Washington as of now. And that's as far out as they are. And I think, I don't want to say it's on hold, but I think everybody's trying to figure out, okay, instead of scheduling 8-9 years down the road, let's wait and find out. Is the group of 4 game that the SEC requires you to get to play, is that going to become a Big Ten game and kind of this playoff, the basketball ACC SEC challenge or Big 12 SEC challenge that we've seen? Or are they going to not do that? I think the SEC's got to go to 9. Okay. There's just going to be too much money involved. At some point, TV is going to go, you know what? We're not interested in LSU McNeese State. What I am interested is I'm interested in LSU in Georgia or LSU in South Carolina or somebody like that. So we'll pay more money for another SEC matchup as opposed to having to put some of these payday games on the SEC network and ABC and ESPN. So I do think we're going to end up going there in the SEC.
I almost hate to do this, Brent, but what are we going to miss? I mean, what kind of trajectory is Tennessee on? How do you project them to look in 2026? I just want to kind of get in my mind finally what I'm going to be missing.
Well, I mean, I think what's interesting is Tennessee's probably going to be breaking in a new quarterback. You're probably going to have a quarterback that's never started a game before, unless he starts a bowl game. But if you make the playoffs, then your starter is not going to opt out at that point. So, I mean, I think if Nico Iamaleava has his way and he has a good year, I think his plan is to go pro. So now you're looking at a backup in Jake Merklinger, if he's still here, who's never played, or George McIntyre, who would be a redshirt freshman, or a true freshman, and Faison Brandon if he stays with his commitment and signs with Tennessee. So it would be quite the change for Tennessee that way. They would be losing some guys on the defensive front. You feel like they're going to be, load back up pretty good. But the biggest thing is quarterback. You're going to be breaking in a new quarterback, and I don't think that's a bad thing if you're an opposing team.
Brent, when you talk about adding that 9th game, if the college football playoff in 26 goes to the auto bids, how much easier is that going to make it for the SEC to get the 9th game? Because they know no matter what the records are, they're going to get 4 teams in the playoff, even if teams are 8-4 at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great way to sell it to a coach, right? Hey, we're going to go to this game, but the result is going to be 4 automatic bids. So we're not going to be sitting there like Alabama was, at the end of November this year, wondering or what's going on. I mean, South Carolina would have been in. So I think that's the selling point you have to make to the coaches. I think the other thing too, and I know this is a bit frustrating for fans. I mean, unfortunately, everything's about money. And how do you make more money? And if you're in the SEC, an extra conference game has a chance to yield each school probably another $5 million a piece. I mean, how do you turn that down? You're trying to find $20 million in rev share, assuming that's rolling through here. Do we think that number is going to stay the same, or is that going to be like the NFL salary cap and it's going to go to 25 and it's going to go to 28 and bump forward in the coming years? So you better find every way you can to make as much money as you can, and you better be giving your fans a product that they're willing to pay $150 a ticket, including a talent fee on your ticket cost. And I mean, you know what I mean? You got to look at those things and factor those things in, because this money machine is just raging out of control right now.
How is your NIL program there at Tennessee for football?
It's been good. I mean, Tennessee's been super aggressive. The collective here was well organized. The collective here, which is a company called Spire, is run by some guys who are marketing people.
Yeah,
who handle PGA golfers, who've handled contracts with endorsement deals. So it wasn't a little bit of a kind of a fly by night, figure it out, learn as you go type deal. They knew what a contract was supposed to look like. They weren't sliding, scratched up sheets of paper and Post-it notes across the table to somebody. I mean, they were early on in those things. Now, I think one of the interesting things is there's a reputation that Tennessee's got a ton of money. They're just out there more than everybody else right now. And I don't think that's the case. It's just they've been organized. They were super aggressive in going after Nico. That was the first big one. There was a ton of publicity in that deal because of how big it was. And I think at times it's kind of, I don't want to say bit Tennessee, but kind of bit them a little bit, because I think some kids want to come visit and they're just driving the market up. They're just driving the price up because the belief they have is that Tennessee's got more money and they know what to do with.
Well, and David Sanders too, right? That was another big one for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, you got David Sanders, and you're sitting there with Tennessee and Ohio State, and then obviously Matt Rule in Nebraska, tried to put as many eggs in that basket as they could get into that basket as well. And I've said it on multiple occasions on our message board and on our podcast. I mean, the world we're living in now, David Sanders has to start from day one. He's a first-round draft pick. You have to view it as he's a first-round draft pick.
Wow.
You cannot sit there and let him set, paying him money, paying him big money. He can't set for a year and know when he's a free agent in December, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're gonna. Wow. This is the interesting thing, I think, Steve and Sean, when you look at NIL and you look at how this thing goes. Mm-hmm. You got two options. One, you can focus your money in the transfer portal and get experienced guys and getting bidding wars there, or you go recruit at the elite level, which means you're going to spend money in recruiting. Well, if you're spending a lot of money in NIL and recruiting, you got to play them. You can't wait. I mean, that's just not the world we're living in now. So, I mean, I think David Sanders should be Tennessee's right tackle from day one. Will he have growing pains? Sure he will. But, I mean, how are you going to have that guy standing over there holding a clipboard, with the university and rev share and with the collective knowing, how much money's been invested there? It's hard to justify that guy standing on the sidelines.
I'll give you another example too. Look at Williams Nwaneri. He goes to Missouri and they tried to create this kind of cute 4-game redshirt plan for him. Guess where he's at? Nebraska right now.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, if we ever get into what Jay Billis was talking about last week and multi-year contracts where you got a buyout if you want to leave, then you got some wiggle room. Uh-huh. Okay. You got some wiggle room, but I mean, why not? I mean, you're going to take big money that first year to stand and watch. Well, you get frustrated, and then what if you leave? Then if you're the collective, you're sitting there going, what do we spend the money on? For him to come and have a redshirt year in the minor leagues before he goes to the major leagues, basically. So I just think in this day and age, if you're going to go that route in recruiting, you've got to play young players. And,
wow, that is really provocative. Thank you. Okay, just one minor thing. Pronounce that quarterback's name again.
Nico Iamaleava.
Wow, Sean, I wasn't even.
I'm almost glad Nebraska's not playing Tennessee, so we didn't have to learn this.
I thought it was Amaliva, which apparently what is going to do for the NFL. Amaliva.
We met his cousin at the Polynesian Bowl. That trainer,
right.
Remember?
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we get to headline number 2, we want to ask Brent Hubbs a little bit about Mike Ekeler, but HuskerOnline Headlines is brought to you by Ridge, and if you're not familiar with Ridge, it is changing the wallet game.
You got the Ridge on you?
I have the Ridge right in my pocket right now. So
hold out.
I have condensed my wallet into this. That's it.
Amazing.
How do you get all your money in that thing, man?
Got my money in the clip. That's 10 cards in there.
That's pretty impressive. A guy of your stature can get all your stuff.
And you get a 10.
It says a lot about
you get a 10 card
product, man.
10 cards in there. But I sat in those uncomfortable bleachers at Millard West High School to swim meet all weekend. I was on my butt at a wedding. I was sitting down. I didn't have my wallet in my back pocket. That fit right in my front pocket. It was perfect. They have lots of different things you can add on to the Ridge wallet. It comes in different colors. You can get team designs as well. Check them out at their website at ridge.com/Husker. And with the promo code Husker, we are going to give you 10% off the price you see already. So use that promo code Husker and you'll get 10% off Ridge wallet. And let me tell you, I've been the traditional wallet guy my whole life. This has changed the game for me with the Ridge wallet.
It's nice, Sean.
I mean, this is like military grade steel.
You should have got Dodger. How come you didn't get a Dodger?
I don't know. I got a nice one though. Like I took advantage of it, and I mean, this thing's bulletproof. I'm pretty sure. I mean, it could take a couple if I had to. But let's get into headline 2 with Brent Hubbs of VolQuest. Because while we have you here, Brent, we might as well talk about Mike Ekeler. We worked with Mike here from 08 to 11, I believe, and you've been with him for a number of years at Tennessee, so we both have good Mike Ekeler stories. But what does the much older, wiser Mike Ekeler bring to the table? The guy that you dealt with at Tennessee the last few years.
Well, he hasn't backed off his intensity, and he hasn't backed off his enthusiasm in any way, shape, or form. He loves a microphone for press conferences. He didn't get to speak a lot, but he famously had a couple of quotes while he was at Tennessee when talking about what he was looking for in a punt returner. He said he was looking for a fart in a skillet. Steve, I'll let you figure out what that means because I'm not real sure. But he was always for a good quote. He is a highly motivated, highly driven, high intensity guy. Still works out like crazy. Still water skis like crazy. He and I hit it off because my family and I are big on the lake. We do a lot of stuff in the summertime on the lake, and Mike's a big water skier, and his family's big into water skiing. So that was a really nice, natural conversation for us when he first arrived in Knoxville, as opposed to me just asking random questions about, special teams or recruiting or whatever. It gave me an opportunity to kind of get to know Mike and go from there. But Tennessee has been good on special teams. They've had really good kickers. That's been a big part of it. I mean, Jackson Ross is a punter from over in Australia that Mike recruited who has been terrific. He's one of those typical Aussie kickers. He can kick with both feet, and he can rugby style kick it. He can hang it up. He can do all those things that you want to do. And Tennessee's been blessed with some good punt returners since he's been here over the last 4 years. So I don't think you're going to find a very different Mike Ekeler when you spend some time with him. I don't think it'll be anything dramatically different from his first time there in Lincoln.
Brent, why do you think this happened? I mean, it was sort of surprising to me when it cropped up. I didn't know exactly initially how seriously to take it. What's your read on how this all transpired? That Mike Ekeler, who had a good 4-year run at Tennessee, left Tennessee?
Well, I think there's two things. One, I think his parents are older, and I think there's a feeling about getting back out there, getting back closer to your mom and dad. His parents could not attend a game this year. I think that's the first time they've not traveled to watch him coach or play, maybe ever. And so I think that was a little bit of it. And he was, quite frankly, on an expiring deal here. And Tennessee had given him a contract, an MOU. Mm-hmm. I think it was another 1-year deal. I think Mike was probably looking for a multi-year deal. And, Nebraska comes calling. Mom and dad's there. His 2 oldest daughters just finishing up at UT. His youngest daughter's not in college yet. So it was probably not the worst time in the world to make the move. And again, I think he was probably looking for a multi-year deal, probably was just going to be a 1-year deal here at Tennessee. And I think all those things factored in.
Brent, you wouldn't know this, and I wouldn't expect you to, but Nebraska's stopped returning punts basically for the last few years, several years. I'm not going to get into the skillet thing, but what has that punt return game look like at Tennessee?
Well, it's been terrific. I mean, it really has. Terrific. I mean, D. Williams is a guy who he made the roster in Seattle as a returner. Mm-hmm. It's the only thing he did in college. He never played. He didn't play a snap of anything else. He played special teams only in college and made the Seahawks roster. He got waived because of a numbers crunch due to injuries, and he ended up with the Giants, which is a tough break for him because that's not where you want to go. It's from Seattle to New York with that franchise. But again, he made it strictly based off special teams. And I think the thing that Mike, and obviously it starts with Josh Heupel as well, but there was a real commitment for players to completely buy in. And there's a lot of, and Mike has talked about this a lot, and so is the other coaching staff members. Willie Martinez, the secondary coach, talked about the transferable skills. The transferable skills from being a gunner or being in kickoff coverage or being in punt return or being able to play in space. And I think because there was the commitment there to that, and you had evidence of guys who were succeeding in that way. I think it benefited Mike greatly within the program because I think kids bought in. I mean, Velus Jones in Tennessee's first year, this staff's first year, Mike's first year, Velus Jones, was right at the top of the school record in kickoff return yards. That special teams play helped him get in the National Football League. And so I think that they've been good on special teams. Perfect, no, but they've been good. They've been aggressive in trying to block punts. They blocked 2 or 3 punts during Mike's time here. They blocked big field goal in the Clemson game. They have not returned kickoffs very much. And I think that's a dying play in college football. These kids can kick it through the end zone. Mm-hmm. And I think offensive minded coaches are going, you know what? I don't want to be backed up on a block in the back penalty. Let's just put the thing down at the 25 and go play. So Tennessee fair caught most of their kickoffs after year 1. But the punt return game, it was D. Williams, and then Boo Carter took over this year, was really dynamic, really electric. They've had some good skill guys back there, but they've trusted guys. I want you to think about this, Steve. Tennessee goes to Baton Rouge in 22. That's a day game, but they put D. Williams back to return a punt. It's the first time he'd ever returned a punt in college.
Okay.
He's in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Yeah.
And Ekeler turns to Hype and he's like, he's ready. Let's go. Throw him out there, Hype. Don't be scared. Go throw him out there. And all he did was return it like 48 yards and set up a score. This past year they did the same thing with Boo Carter. Freshman, like, hey, game 5, he's ready. Let's go. Get him the ball. Let's go play. And so they've not been afraid to play young people in that role. And I think that's a byproduct of Mike.
What was Heupel? How did Heupel treat special teams in terms of letting starters play, seasoned starters? Did he hold those guys off of them?
Yeah, a little bit, particularly the last couple of years. It kind of, as they built their roster up, it changed a little bit that way. Not so much on punt return, or punt coverage. But, I mean, I think from a kickoff standpoint, I think something like 86% or 87% of the kickoffs, maybe even higher than that, went in the end zone.
Uh-huh.
So Tennessee didn't have – so it's like, do we want those guys to run 20 mile an hour on a GPS and log 70 yards? Now, if the kicker hit one like he did at Vanderbilt, it became a house call because Tennessee didn't have what they needed out there to make a play. But they essentially gave up 2 kickoff returns this year. They gave up a kickoff return for a touchdown at Vanderbilt. And then I think it was the Ohio State game, they gave up about a 30 or 40-yard return because I think just the wind and the cold weather made that ball hard to get into the end zone there. But otherwise, there's a lot of touchbacks.
Hubbs, I'm curious on Tennessee's staff, how have they broken it down? Like Nebraska, used to be kind of regulated to just 10 guys. Nebraska now with this new rule, they have 13 guys that you would kind of label the old school full-time coach. Has Tennessee been as aggressive of expanding not just the analysts and the other GAs, but actually almost creating new position coach jobs and paying these guys what you normally would have seen an assistant coach make?
Well, Mike Ekeler's replacement was an analyst who promoted from within.
Okay.
He got a $25,000 raise for year 1 on his contract to take him to $350,000. He was making $325,000 as an analyst and as a recruiter. So the commitment is there. They have promoted from within on the special team side and then brought in a veteran special teams coach to kind of help a young Evan Crabtree kind of get situated in there. So again, I think when you look at this thing, it goes back to that money machine. Who's telling a coach no? Right? I mean, that's the hard part with collectives. That's the hard part with AD, Steve. I mean, who's going to go to that coach and go, hey, we're cutting your staff. We're going to limit your staff. Or better yet, I know you like that player, but he's just too expensive for us. We're just not going to pay that amount of money. So you need to let him walk and go get somebody cheaper.
Yep.
Everybody's talking about GMs, and I know this is a topic for another day probably, but everybody's talking about this GM role in college.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can explain to me exactly what the GM role is. Is that guy really going to have say where he goes to the coach and goes, Coach, here's your roster. I know you like that starting tackle, but he asked for more money than we wanted to pay, so we're getting rid of him. Right. We're gonna put this redshirt freshman out there that we don't have a whole lot of money involved in right now. So that's the way we're gonna. I mean, is a coach really going to accept that? Because in the college game, coaches have dictated everything. They're the most powerful person on campus. They don't get told no.
Nebraska tried doing that before even NIL. They hired a former NFL GM named Billy Devaney. He was the Falcons GM, and it was a disaster because he was going into the position room telling position coaches, you need to start this guy over that guy. And those, as you know, that doesn't go over very well with college.
We were interviewing Billy Devaney about personnel.
Yeah.
I mean, personnel moves. It did get kind of weird.
Because Mike Riley kind of allowed it, with his personality. They wanted kind of more of an alpha voice to kind of run that kind of stuff.
Well, and I mean, here's the thing. Right now, it's the catch thing. It's the cool thing, right? I mean, it's the cool thing to do. I think Alabama's they've got two guys. They've got a GM and an assistant GM.
Oh,
I think they've got about $800,000 or $900,000 invested in those two guys. Now, how much are they helping you win? What is their say with Kalen DeBoer? How much justification do you have there? I think that's why some schools are taking a wait and see approach on the GM deal, while some others are trying to make a splash and say, I mean, I don't know this, but the guy from Texas Tech that went to Notre Dame and stayed a hot minute, he was there about 36 hours and went back and left. My guess is after a good half-day meeting with Marcus Freeman, he probably said, you know what, I got a lot more say at Texas Tech. And they got a lot more NIL money right now with this guy who just sold his company and going to probably put a lot of money into Texas Tech. And I've got a lot more power in Lubbock than I'm going to have in South Bend because Marcus Freeman's going to run that show up there. So he goes back. And again, how are you going to handle that, I think, is the question everybody's trying to figure out in college football right now.
Well, Brent, we really appreciate you coming on, and I'm thinking we're going to have you on again because this is just us sitting down talking college football. We could do this for about 2 hours.
Hubbs, you injected life into our February.
I didn't inject life into his February. Danny White injected life into
No, you did too, though. Thank you. You did too. Very compelling conversation.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. You guys take care. Call anytime. We'll do it. I love to talk ball.
Thanks again to Brent Hubbs for joining us here on HuskerOnline Headlines. Before we get into headline 3, HuskerOnline Headlines is brought to you by Factor. It is that time of year. You're trying to eat right, do things healthy. You want to take meals to work or have lunches ready to go that are easy to heat up. You maybe don't have time to cook. Well, Factor every week puts together over 40 options. They have 8 dietary preferences. You can go keto, you can go spice, you can go vegetarian, you name it. They have calorie smart meals, all the different combinations. You pick them. They send the box right to your front door every week. You put them in your refrigerator. These meals are never frozen. They're always fresh. You heat them up, and you've got your meals for the week. And with Husker Online, we are going to give you 50% off your first box of Factor plus free shipping. You need to go to the website. That's factor.com/Factor Podcast, or just use that promo code as well, Factor Podcast, and they're going to give you 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Thanks again to Factor for sponsoring us here on Husker Online Headlines. But man, I told Brent's amazing.
Sean, I mean, he better have a good. They have to have a good show at Tennessee.
There's very few people that you meet that, that do what we do at the, in a market like Nebraska. He's one of them.
Yeah, I met him. When we went to Nashville, you introduced me to Hubbs, and I was immediately taken by how intelligent and what a good personality he has. And I thought yesterday when I texted you, we should have Hubbs on us. That's what I was thinking.
Good call.
That guy was. I could tell he was going to be really good. He knows his stuff.
He's hosted TV shows and he's on the broadcast for.
So what's he do on the broadcast?
The best example I give you is, he's like the third voice.
Okay.
So
sweet.
There's a color guy, and then he's like the third guy.
That's a good job now.
And so he's a part of that with Tennessee.
Yeah, that was really, really compelling. That general manager discussion is fascinating. I don't know what you do with that position, because you can't have him you can't have him making calls on personnel.
Alabama's got $900,000 invested in those jobs right now.
And Hubbs made he raised a good question. What is the job? What is their job? Are they just negotiating? That's part of it, right? They're helping the negotiation process.
You also have to still have a university official, not from the football program, a part of these meetings, because you're spending, guess whose money? Their money. It's not the football team's money. The athletic director and his assistants, they have to have some oversight on this process now.
So is that Haven Fields?
Haven Fields, Troy Dannon.
Yeah.
You can't just spin at free will.
Right. Interesting.
All right. Headline 3. Future Husker Tyson Terry wins his 4th state title on a torn ACL. He goes 169-0. He won the heavyweight in Class A 4 straight years. That is a grown man's weight. And to win that, thinking back, winning that weight, imagine as a 15-year-old freshman, Sipple, winning the heavyweight wrestling in Class A.
I'm listening to you.
I mean, it's really remarkable. He had one of his toughest matches in the semis. In the semis against a Division I caliber recruit, and was able to win in overtime. But now we know he had a torn ACL as well.
Yeah, he had a torn ACL. He won that semifinal. He did get pressed in the Class A semifinals 2-1.
Preston Wagner from Fremont.
You got it. Preston Wagner. And Terry said something interesting. This is part of what makes this run special. He didn't have his A game. Tyson Terry said, "I don't think I was really ready for a dogfight." He went in there thinking it was going to be easy. And what he said was the critical line. He says, "I had to find a way." You have those days. We all have those days. You just got to find a way. And he found a way. And it was tense. I saw his post-match interview, Sean. You could tell Terry was kind of, I'd almost say rattled. Like, oh, that was close. That was close. But then in the state final, he pinned his guy and became, Sean, I think he's the sixth undefeated. There's been
very few in Class A that have ever won 4. I mean, the number of guys that have won 4 in Class A,
I think it's 6.
Because what inevitably happens in wrestling, you might win it young, but you just don't know how the weights are going to fall. There could be a guy that's really good that moves up, or a guy that moves down. This Preston Wagner kid from Fremont, he's a Division I guy. He's got a North Dakota State. Here he is. When we met him at our in-state tour last year, I said, you look like Cam Jurgens.
Ooh, tough dude.
But Preston Wagner pushed him here. This was a year ago. He was 220, and he's got a North Dakota State wrestling offer. So it's a legit D1 wrestler that he had to beat to get that. So it wasn't like he just, waltzed into that 4th title. That might have been one of the toughest matches he had in his 4 years.
Right. So, Sean, I was kind of stumbling all over myself over here, as we do sometimes. There have been 6 undefeated 4-time champs in Nebraska wrestling history, all weights. So he's the 6th. As you mentioned, 169-0. Did it with an ACL, which he actually announced that. Didn't he announce that in December that he was going to wrestle? Yeah, he did. Signing day. He announced. He announced he was going to go with an ACL.
He stopped playing football, and I think people just assumed it wasn't a full ACL or he was just getting it done. But he did what he had to do to get to this point. It was so important. The Terry family is North Omaha. They are part of North High. They've been a part of North High for decades. And this was an extremely important thing for his family to win this championship. His father was a state champion. He's got his, I watched his uncle, Aaron Terry, who's the D-line coach at Iowa Western. I believe he got beat, I believe, in the finals by Ricky Henry.
Oh, really?
And it was a freaking brawl. I mean, it was like 2-1. And it was intense, and but they're tough. I mean, these are guys that bleed North Omaha, love the community, and for Tyson Terry, this was a big moment for him to finish this thing out with that 4th title. Because most guys now do early enroll, but obviously this is what he wanted to do. Kind of reminds me of Cam Jurgens. He won the state shot and discus as a senior after he broke his leg. He broke his leg in football. And he returned to practice 1 week before state, essentially, to come back and win it.
Champions. And the thing, some of this stuff sounds a little cliche and almost goes without saying, but you have to kind of stop and think about what these guys, a guy like Tyson Terry went through. Everybody's gunning for you. Everybody wants to be the guy to beat you. Everybody. So it really is remarkable. You can't stress enough that he did it with a torn ACL. Now that it's late February. If it's a 6-month injury, do the math: March, April, May, June, July, August. He probably is looking at a redshirt year at Nebraska, right?
Yeah, I mean,
which he probably would have done anyway.
Like we've seen ACLs as early as 4, but that's not the norm.
4 months.
I mean, they tell people it usually takes a year.
Right.
So at best case, he could play a couple games this year, maybe. But I think at worst case, you shut him down and let him rest, let him redshirt and recover and develop. And, you know, he is the same size in high school as Nash Hutmacher. So they at the St. Michael's Husker night, they did a lot of comparisons, you know, and said like that he reminds them a lot of Nash when he was this age from what they know.
Nash probably more of a weight room guy.
Probably because of his dad. I mean, Joe is a big lifter.
Yeah.
I do want to bring up one other wrestler too. He's going to be a Husker, Cade Ziola from Scott.
Okay.
He is ranked number 2 in the nation. And he's going to go wrestle for Mark Manning. His dad actually went to high school with me at Gross. But his 2 twin boys, one of them, Cade, is going to be a wrestler, and his other one's going to be a pitcher, throws 95 miles per hour at Scott.
Pitcher for Nebraska?
For Nebraska.
Wow.
And I believe him and the Terrier, they might even live together. The 3 of those guys are really close. In fact, when they were young boys, we were coming back from Florida. This is like 2020. And we saw 2019 December. We saw Cade Ziola and Tyson Terry, and they were young little 8th grade type kids, 7th grade kids on the plane going to like a national wrestling tournament. And so they've been kind of tied together, and it was cool to see them both finish. But Cade Ziola is a dominant force. Like he tech falled everybody, meaning he won by 15 or more.
And let me get this straight. He has a brother that throws at 95 in high school.
Twin brother.
Do you understand what that is?
And then their younger brother, who's a sophomore,
95.
He's won it twice in wrestling. So they got another brother. So yeah, the Ziolas are, they're not football, but they're going to leave their impact at Nebraska. And they'll both be at Nebraska here as well.
Good info, Sean.
But yeah, there they are. That's Ziola and Terry. They go way back.
Oh, hold on, let me see that. Oh yeah, dudes.
Ziola's arms for his size. He's got like a wings. He's like 6'2", 6'3" with a wingspan of like 6'7".
That helps. That helps when you're taking those shots, Sean.
But it'll be these 2 guys will be good buddies. You'll see them around Nebraska together a lot, supporting one another. And I don't think Tyson Terry will wrestle. He put his shoes in the ring.
Yeah, he did.
And that's the sign that you're done. Yep. You know, you kind of hang it
symbolic.
up. You put your shoes in the ring.
He did. He put them in the middle of the mat. It's not a ring, it's a mat.
You know what? You have to be pretty sweet to do that though. Like you can't, like if you got like 7th place at state, people would be like, "Get your shoes out of here!" Like, I mean,
why are those shoes in the middle of the mat?
Like, why? Hey, Sipple, pick your shoes.
Get your damn shoes out of here.
I would love to know like the code. Like, do you have to be like a multi-level state champ to get the respect to be able to put your shoes on the mat?
Respect. That's what that is. I mean, Tyson Terry. Wow.
When you're done working for me, are you just going to put your laptop and just leave it in the press box?
That's not my style. Oh, yeah, that is my style.
You're just going to leave your laptop?
Yeah, I'm going to leave my laptop.
Just say, I'm done.
I'm done. That's it.
Back to a rotary phone.
All right, move on.
All right. Before we go to headline number 4, HuskerOnline Headlines, brought to you by BetterHelp. Look, there's a lot going on, a lot of stress in our lives. And sometimes you just need somebody to talk to, somebody to help you through the struggles you might be battling with work or your family or personal situations that are going on. And the best way through that is therapy. BetterHelp is there to help you. They match you with a therapist that fits you. And they have a great survey program that helps you get the correct match. And then the best part is you do it on your own time. You don't have to go into an office somewhere or set up an appointment and be somewhere for the appointment. You do it on your computer or your phone at your home. And you know, it's a FaceTime type deal. And, you know, I think for a lot of people, that's what you want because it's an extremely private thing as well. And you want to do it on your own time. If you've never tried BetterHelp, visit their website at betterhelp.com/Husker. We'll give you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp. Again, that's betterhelp.com/Husker. Thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring us here on HuskerOnline Headlines. Okay, let's get into headline number 4. And I want to hit on this. It has to do with the college football playoffs. Conference auto bids could bring some fun changes to the conference championship weekend. And you know, the story just keeps moving, and it's hard to keep up with. But this is the big picture of what auto bids could do. For me, looking at Nebraska, it's going to give you a better chance to make a playoff. Well, number one, the Big Ten would get 4 bids. So what would happen now? Instead of having a traditional conference championship game like this year, Oregon and Penn State, you would have 3 games that weekend. So Oregon and Penn State would play each other
for the title
in a 1 versus 2 game.
Okay, so the one gets an automatic bid. Obviously, the winner gets an automatic bid, right?
Well, the winner, yeah, and then they're playing for the bye, because in the 14-team playoff, the top 2 teams would get a bye. So that game, but then this is where the intrigue is. Indiana would play Iowa in a 3 versus 6.
If it last year's stand,
yeah, we're going off last year. Ohio State would play Illinois, and guess what? Nebraska lost to Iowa by 3 points.
Mm-hmm.
They lost to Ohio State by 4 points. They lost to Illinois by 3 points in overtime.
What are they playing for?
A spot in the playoff, an auto bid.
That's amazing.
So, okay, we always say Nebraska is so far away, but they lost to Iowa by 3. They lost to Ohio State by 4, and they lost to Illinois by 3 in overtime.
I mean, I will add to the conversation that gets you absolutely nothing, but yeah, I guess
I'm just saying,
right.
Like those teams would be in a play-in game.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Nebraska is that far away from Illinois and Iowa? I'm not saying Ohio State, because I get Ohio State, but
no, I don't.
Illinois and Iowa right there. Nebraska,
I don't think they're
so. To me, it makes it much more attainable for Nebraska to get a swing at getting to a playoff.
I think there's no doubt about it. This is remarkable. But where'd you see this, by the way?
Pete Nakos had a story on it, and
this is remarkable.
And so the SEC would do its own version.
Would the ACC?
So everybody would, because what we learned this year, conference championship weekend was kind of a dud. I mean, SMU Clemson was a play-in game, so that had some intrigue. But think of the ratings.
This is not a dud. This would be remarkable.
And
there's a lot of things that are happening in college football I just do not agree with. But how do you push back? Now, would the pushback be, okay, you got to talk me through some of this. Talk the old man through this. So there's a championship game. Is the loser out then?
No, then the loser is in.
Still in the playoff.
Yeah, they'd get one of the auto bids.
Okay.
So 1 and 2 are playing for the bye.
Okay.
And then the other 2 games, essentially the winners are playing for the other bids.
The only pushback someone might make is you could get a 6 seed in the playoff at the expense of a team that was better during the season, the 3 seed, right?
Well, and in that case, maybe the 3 seed would still get in.
Like getting out large.
The Big Ten would have to make that decision.
Yeah.
Because I think the conference would decide the bids.
Okay.
Not the committee.
Yeah.
I don't like the committee having the power they have.
I don't think many people do.
And I think this would let it play out where like South Carolina and Alabama would have an opportunity to play in.
It would be incredible. It would make the conference race, make the regular season a little more interesting. Because if you're the number 6 team, you're in business, right? You're in business.
Oh, yeah. And Nebraska was not that far off from being number 6 team.
I would think if you're Matt Rule, if you're a Nebraska staff, you're a player, you're looking at this and going, okay. Not just because I don't want to suggest that Nebraska's just shooting for number 6, but it does give you an avenue, a little wider avenue to get through, right?
It makes the season more relevant across the board.
100. Bring this on.
And think about
do it.
Well, and here's why we're doing this. Three things: Fox, CBS, NBC. So if you're the Big Ten and you have 3 prime television partners, and I don't know if they would do it this way, but imagine a weekend where you played a Friday night game on Fox, a 2:30 game on CBS, and an NBC night game. All 3 went to the playoffs.
What are the drawbacks? Why could, if you had to pick out some reasons why this won't happen, what would that be?
I would say the drawback is the power that this would give the Big Ten, that much more power.
And the SEC?
And the SEC, because they are creating a product that the other leagues can't create that's going to make more money, and they already make the most money. So guaranteed spots allow you to create more product to make more money.
And so because of the ACC and the Big 12 having half as many autos as that's what it looks like it could be, the Big 10 would have 4 automatic bids. The SEC would have 4 automatic bids. The ACC would have 2. The Big 12 would have 2. They can't do this, the ACC and the Big 12.
Well, they would do it too. So they might have like their own little bracket of 2 games.
2 games.
Possibly 2. Yeah. So it would create like games that would be better than bowl games.
Yeah. I'm asking you some questions that are hard to answer because it's all.
Well, NACO's had a really good breakdown of it. And he broke down what the matchups would be for each week, for each league.
Are the powers that be floating this out?
Oh, and the SEC even had a theory of doing 4 games and having 8 teams involved.
Okay.
So
I'm open to it.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. But yeah, the pushback to me is the other leagues know if this happens, the gap widens even more. Because those 3 games I showed you, how could the ACC or the Big 12 stage 1 game equal that?
They can't.
Like Kansas State, Iowa State, God bless them, but they can't match up with that. They're not going to do it. Arizona State, Iowa State doesn't do it.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, yeah, they're good teams.
It doesn't do it.
But it's about the eyeballs, the networks, the ratings, and that's what's driving this.
I mean, me, on this little market we have at HuskerOnline, I'm the one fighting for the ACC and the Big 12. But when I see this, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what you do.
Well, and Notre Dame will be protected because there'll be 2 auto bids, one for the group of 5 and one essentially for Notre Dame. As long as Notre Dame stays in like the top 14 or whatever it would be, top 12 or top 14, I assume it's top 12 or 14, they would get a spot.
But they're away from the excitement. That's the thing I wouldn't like if I was a Notre Dame fan. I'd kind of like if this would come to pass. If I were a Notre Dame fan, I'd be like, I'd like to be in the Big 10 because that looks fun. What
if Notre Dame said, we'll join the ACC if the ACC can go to 3 bids? Would that be a fair horse trade?
Yeah. Yes. My first reaction is yes. Now, how that would all, there's ramifications to that and it'd probably get pretty complex. But at first blush, I'd like to look at that.
Because Notre Dame, if the SEC and the Big 10 do kind of get this scheduling agreement in place with 9 conference games and maybe a matchup between the 2 leagues, what SEC and Big 10 teams could even play Notre Dame? You're not really going to play an 11th Power 5 game.
No, it's weird.
So they're going to get boxed out of some games.
This is what these okay, but so people always kind of wonder who's making these decisions.
The TV networks
and the conference commissioners, right? The conference commissioners, the 10 conference commissioners, they all have to sort of align at least enough. I don't know.
You're a boxing guy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what you're trying to do is stage fights that people want to watch.
All right.
Like
Don King.
And that's what these commissioners are doing. Let's stage games that are going to be worth a lot of money. And let's stage more of them and find more and more and protect ourselves with guaranteed spots so we can just keep playing more of these games because we want to see them.
You put the puzzle together pretty well. The part of the puzzle that's complicated is what becomes of the lesser conferences. That's the part of the puzzle that's hard to reconcile.
And they're going to continue to lose real estate on Fox and ABC.
The Big 12, ACC, and so
they're not going to get the good windows.
No, if I were the Kansas State AD or Brett Yormark, the Big 12 commissioner, Jim Phillips, the ACC commissioner, now you could correct me if I'm wrong, but this would scare me. If I were the ACC commissioner, the Big 12 commissioner, and I'm seeing this in print, this is what the Big 10's up to. Wouldn't that scare you a little bit? Because they know the appeal.
They can't match it.
Right. I don't know what you do. You're in a fix. As those commissioners, you're in a fix.
Especially if Clemson doesn't get back to being Clemson. And Florida State doesn't get back to being the level of team they were before last year.
Right.
Then all of a sudden the ACC doesn't. I mean, you hope Miami gets back.
Yeah, they're kind of getting back-ish.
But the ACC needs those teams to get up to the level of the SEC and Big Ten teams.
Or Belichick to have
North
a
Carolina.
quick rise, you know. That would help.
I would think, though, the Big 12 is okay with 2 guaranteed bids, because in the current format, it would be hard for them to get more than 1.
Okay-ish, because you're still that other conference. You're not.
Yeah, think about Kansas State. They had to play multiple games this year on ESPN at 9:30 p.m. And like that's what's happened. Like the SEC and Big Ten get all the prime games, all the real estate.
This is fascinating.
You're putting Kansas State BYU on at 9:30.
God, you don't just thank God. You're thank every day. If you're a Nebraska fan, you thank heavens you're in the Big Ten.
Oh, if we were in the Big 12 right now,
what would we be talking about?
Nebraska would be playing 9:30 at night games on ESPN.
And no, but what I'm talking about is access. The lack of access to the CFP.
You could actually make a case, though, Nebraska would have a better chance to be one of the 2.
How do you make that case?
In the Big 12.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if they had the most resources and the biggest stadium and the most NIL in that league, which they would.
Yes, they would. But Sean, I don't know if the money would be the same.
It wouldn't be the same. And you'd have to really rely on the boosters.
Right. You might be overly reliant on boosters.
Because think of that television gap.
Right.
20, 30 million a year.
How do you make up for that?
Like, you can't really ask the Peds to do that every year for you.
No. Nebraska doesn't have a ton of super well-heeled boosters. Not a ton.
You've taken my well-heeled.
You took it from me, and
Rick Neuheisel said it,
and I retook it from
you. And I've
you.
been saying that. I saw you wrote that this week. I'm like, ooh, Sybil really took a liking to the well-heeled line.
I got a question for you while we're bantering. What is keto? Sometimes we reveal our stupidity when you always talk about keto. What is that?
Keto is like a no-carb diet where you just eat like meat, protein, meat-driven vegetables, but no carbs. Like basically
that sounds kind of appealing to me.
Keto. You're gonna get on the keto diet after this.
All right, Sean,
let's
that was good. That was interesting.
Odds and ends. Headline number 5. I want to start first with Jet Tamala.
God, Jet Tamale. Talk about a dude on the rise, Sean.
Yeah, Omaha Millard South's Jet Tamala, now the number 1 player in Nebraska. He's 194 in the On3 top 300. 4 stars. And he's carrying a grade of 90 on On3, not ranked by 2 of the other services. 6'5", 195. He's got Iowa State. He's got some other power.
Here comes Michigan, Sean. Michigan's talking to him. Michigan wants him to come to their spring game. Or their spring spring practice. The
last couple of weeks have turned for Jet Tamala to where he's going to be making 6 figures and probably in a big time program by this time next year.
Forgot about the money. But yeah, I mean, Iowa State's very interested. Missouri's very interested. Michigan is showing interest. He is now, I mean, it's very informative. I think people should know he's the number 1 player in the state.
When they won the state title, and you'll appreciate this story because Ty Wisdom, as you know, the former Millard South coach now at Chandler in Arizona, not lacking confidence. And he said, it's a freaking joke that no one's offered Jet. And, he had one of the best years.
Wisdom said that.
Yeah. He's like, why? He just couldn't believe why teams had not offered.
And he hadn't had an offer. Then San Diego State got it rolling. Right?
Yeah. Then several more have come.
Right.
But he still hasn't gotten that big, SEC Big Ten offer yet.
Would you call Michigan a big one?
And that's coming.
Hasn't got the offer, but Chip Lindsey's talking to him.
Yeah. And this rating helps get way more eyeballs on you. And, it's going to create, let's call it what it is. There's going to be some debate in Nebraska now because they've already got a quarterback in Dayton Raiola.
I was going to ask
committed
you about that,
to Nebraska. And so we're going to kind of relive the Easton Stick, Zane Flores type deal, with this. But this is the highest ranked guy I've ever seen as a quarterback in Nebraska in a while. Wow. He's a 4-star. That doesn't happen in Nebraska very often.
No, and if for context, how about the last 2 seasons? 73 touchdown passes, 12 interceptions. 73-12 is the ratio. Sean, that's an amazing ratio. Big kid.
All right, odds and ends. Troy Dannon wrapping up his first year at Nebraska. It's hard to believe it's been a year, but think about all the things that he's kind of had to take on between addressing the NIL, the stadium project, the concessions deal,
John Cook, and then Tennessee.
And the
Tennessee matter, we'll call it.
But I think a lot of people really appreciate his style in terms of, taking charge.
100%, Sean. Okay. I mean, it's only been a year, but I'd say in the last 4 months, we've kind of got to know him more. And what I've noticed about him is he's got some charisma. He's got some leadership charisma. ADs at this level, the power conference level, are there for a reason. They usually don't fall into those spots. Now we've seen him lead, and now you have a better sense of why he's in that position. He's formidable is what I'm saying. He's a very formidable leader. Like if you meet him, he's very quick, right? What I've noticed about him is he is very quick on his feet in answering questions about a multitude of issues. He can handle it all. And it's really, I'd say really impressive.
The other thing too, where he's different than Trev Alberts kind of was thrifty, tried to, keep salaries lower, cut deals. Dan immediately recognized how low Nebraska's staff salaries were. Like Nebraska's staff for football pay, the total head coach assistant salaries, it was below like Maryland and Rutgers. And Iowa was like way higher than Nebraska. Ohio State's like $30 million. And I think Nebraska is now like 17, 18 million. Iowa's like 19, but they were down at like 13-ish, which was so
Trev was very thrifty.
And
you're right.
You in this type of deal with the Big Ten now and the SEC, particularly these leagues, there's no room for thrifty.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, if you're really, I say it all the time. I hate it. I hate it when I do this, repeat myself because it's a sign of old age. But if you really are interested in taking down those teams, and you know the ones, right? Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Oregon. That's what we're talking about, right? If you're really interested in taking them down, you got to spend like them. You got to act like them. You got to be like them. Unless you just think you're going to be the little underdog story that comes in, nips their heels, and maybe takes them down sometimes. I don't think that's what Nebraska wants ultimately, is it?
No, and you're not going to, if you got to a playoff, you can't win 3 or 4 games.
No.
Cutting corners.
No. Which gets us back to this discussion. Like Arizona State, that's all I could think about during the playoff. They might clip somebody, Arizona State. They might clip somebody, but they ain't winning 4 in a row. So you really got to build your roster, and build your staff, build your roster, build your NIL program, build your weight room, build everything to a point where you can create a monster that can win 4 straight games.
Think about Ohio State
in the playoff
on head coach and staff salaries. I think they have 6 assistants over $1 million. But they had $30 million committed to their head coach and staff, then 20 to their players. So that's 15.
Our listeners right now, our dear,
or that's 50, excuse me, 50 million.
Are our dear listeners sitting here going, we don't want to spend that much.
But you want to win.
Right. Now, I don't know what they're saying. I wonder.
But that's
what your mom's saying.
That's what it's going to take, though. Nebraska fans want to be relevant. That's what relevant is.
They want more than relevant.
Right.
Yeah. You want to win it or not? You want to win it all?
So let's spitball like Nebraska, whatever their staff's at now, like 17, $18 million. And let's put their NIL. I'm just going to put their NIL this past year at like 13 to 15. So Nebraska was spending on this team this last year with coaches and players probably $30 million. Ohio State spent 50.
See, that's the thing. Yeah. The way I look at the hires of Holgorsen and Ekeler is that Nebraska's serious. They're really serious now.
And Dannon recognizes that.
Yeah.
I think Dannon, because it like when Matt Rule came, like having assistant coaches making like $280,000, like that's just not like Big Ten level.
Nope, it's not. It's like you think you're still in the Big 8, Big 12.
Like, I mean,
come on.
They were like the lowest paid assistants in the whole Big Ten almost. I mean, like that was low for the Big Ten. So I think some of that's changed where now you're seeing 3 coaches at Nebraska make over $1 million. And Dannon, you know, in an interview said that he's like, look, he goes, we're going to give Matt Rule what he needs. Like, I think this thought of like a budget, like if it's within reason and there's the market for it, they're going to support.
You know what it's again, some of this stuff is just stating the obvious, but where Dannon came from Washington. Dannon knows what it looks like. He knows what it looks like, what championship looks like. Washington played for it all. I mean, he knows what it looks like.
All right, briefly, basketball, big one against Michigan. It's basically a pick-em point spread tonight. Do we know if Burke is coming back?
Yeah. Fred talked about it on Saturday. Probably coming back,
limited minutes,
but maybe restricted a little bit. It's really important that he's back for this particular game because Michigan has the two. Sean, they prayed out 2 7-footers. Danny Wolf and the other guy whose name I can't pronounce. Golden is the last name. 2 7-footers. Okay. They're a bear. That Michigan will be a bear. But I see it. I can see why it's a pick 'em. I don't think you could win it without Burke, though.
And it's 65 degrees in Lincoln today.
Is it?
Monday night in Pinnacle Bank Arena is going to be rocking.
It'll be warm in there too.
Like it will be. I mean, people will be ready to roll.
Yeah, and they need Nebraska. Let's face it, they need to win. They haven't, like Fred said, in the last 2 games, 80 minutes. They probably played 15 good ones. That's not going to cut it.
And they were fortunate to beat Northwestern.
Yeah, they need to. Yeah,
and baseball, turning the page, lost 2 of 3 to Louisiana Lafayette.
That was a quick turn, Sean.
Well, we're over an hour here, so I'm trying to
quick turn.
But baseball,
I want to ask you more about Akita. That's joking.
Keto.
Akita.
Keto, one of your girlfriends or something?
Easy.
Keto.
You have problems, Sean. You have issues.
Louisiana Lafayette took 2 of 3, and I'm not one to ever overreact. They lost a doubleheader on Saturday. But on baseball, like
no,
I've learned long ago, like on our message board especially, people lose it over like February baseball series losses.
Yeah, don't do that.
It's a long battle, but tough weekend for Nebraska.
It was rainy weekend. Ran into some good pitching down there, particularly on Saturday. They'll bounce back.
Sam Houston, LSU, Kansas State this weekend.
Jeez.
So can they get 2 out of 3 in the Frisco Baseball Classic?
Hey,
that will be.
How about Omaha, by the way?
Beat LSU, was it once or twice?
Once. How about that?
Again, February baseball.
Yeah, I got it.
Like,
but it's still big. Don't diminish Omaha's accomplishment.
No, it's a great win.
Yeah.
They drew like 4,400 for a basketball game against South Dakota this week.
Well, I think they're leading the Summit.
Yeah, they split the league title.
Hello. It's a great accomplishment.
So
that's a great accomplishment.
We could have 3 teams in Nebraska in the big dance of 68. That's pretty remarkable.
It'd be really fun. I mean it.
Unless you were like at the newspaper and had to manage the budget for all 3 trips.
Well, the Journal Star ain't going to cover Omaha.
No, but Omaha, like the World our friends of the World Herald and the TV station.
Oh God, that's a lot.
They have to and Channel 7, they'll cover them all.
They might come to you and say, "Hey, can you string for us, Sean?" Your reply would be, "Nope." Yeah, that's a lot. You know, the most interesting part of this show, I thought almost, was Tamala
getting the 4th star.
God, yeah.
And he'll be at the in-state tour on Sunday.
Ooh, need to talk to him.
Yep.
That's not to shortchange Hubbs, because Hubbs was incredible. Our friend Brent, your friend, and my
every time we were like, God, we don't have much to talk about. We just went for an hour and 5 minutes at a great show.
I could keep going.
All right.
Hubbs was incredible.
With that said, make sure you give us a try at HuskerOnline.com. For Steve Sipple, I'm Sean Callahan, signing off here for Husker Online Headlines.